So hallo und willkommen in Algerian. Get yourself comfortable, relax, and enjoy our webinar on the Algerian economy and the special topic of today, the startup industry. A new generation of business people, entrepreneurs, see the whole world nowadays as their market. And many of such companies are startups and new ventures. You might ask yourself, what actually is a startup? According to the European Monitor of Startups, a startup is a dynamic young company, not older than 10 years. And they have found an interesting technology, a new business approach, and they have the will to grow. They want to grow, not just revenue-wise, they also want to grow turnover-wise, and they want to become global players, also grow into new markets. Governments and also the standard business community has realized that we have to help startups. We have to provide the right infrastructure for such startups, not just financially in providing credit and venture capital, but also infrastructure-wise. So business parks and platforms have been created, often linked to a university or linked to already well-established companies that already give some guidance, but also contracts and business to such young ventures. My name is Franz Bachhletter. I have been the commercial counselor of the Austrian Embassy for more than 3.5 years in Algeria, and I also cover Tunisia and Niger. Just recently, I have also read an article, I think it was yesterday, in the Journal Afrique, and they spoke about a Tunisian startup company called InstaDeep, and they managed to get into the rank of the top 100 companies, startups that actually have developed artificial knowledge and artificial science, and they work together now with BioNTech, Pfizer, and other biotech companies to develop ways to fight cancer. So this is just a small example of a North African company that is successful and has managed to win the market. I think many Algerian companies can do the same, and we will learn more about it. Let me give you a brief introduction into our program of today. We will start after my introduction into the Algerian market with a brief video session of both our ambassadors. And then Mr. Usani, Senior Advisor of Ernst & Young, will talk about the topic of startups, followed by our lawyer of confidence, Mr. Hakim Al-Tamar. He will discuss about the legal framework for investments, followed then by Mr. Youssef Goula, who is a financial expert of BNP Paribas. And then at the end, we will come to the session of questions and answers. Now let me give you a brief introduction to the Algerian market. Corona has also hit the Algerian companies, not just health-wise, but also turnover-wise. And we also saw that Austrian exporters lost a bit in this market. We lost around 18%. And if I calculate the whole year 2020, we might reach around 287 million euros in exports. Our exports are based on three pillars. One pillar is mobility. That means jeeps, trucks, heavy vehicles for the army, for firefighting brigades, but also equipment for the railways. This is the first pillar. The second pillar is engineering and machine building. And the third pillar, this is timber, sawn timber. Most of it comes via the port of Koper, Slovenia. Algeria, on the other hand, is a major exporter of oil to Austria, and they have grown their oil exports by more than 50% last year. This is a good sign, and they might reach around 215 to 220 million euros. So you can see that the trade balance is more or less balanced. We would need more investors in Algeria, and we are fighting for that. And we are also a platform to help and accompany Austrian potential investors to Algeria. I also would like to welcome all of our representative agents that follow this webinar, because they are the backbone of our success in Algeria, in the Algerian market, and a special thanks for that. Part of the business of us is also that we are successfully participating in public tenders. So the whole public sector is tendering off projects, and here I would like to invite the Austrian community to become even more active in the tendering process. Where do we see potential? I think the Algerian economy has to reorientate themselves toward industrializing the whole country. Here we see big potential in, let's say, in the pharmaceutical industry, in the paper industry, and we have just recently also started a business report about potential in infrastructure for the tourist industry. Also, I think in the future, Algeria will have to develop this sector even further, because this is a useful source for foreign currency and income. Another topic in the future will be the mining sector. Here, I think many Austrian companies find opportunities. It's not just iron ore, it's phosphate, it's gold, and other mineral resources that are found in the largest country of Africa. We must not forget that Algeria is the largest country in Africa, and therefore many resources probably have not yet been discovered. So now I will leave the introduction and pass on to the video session of both our ambassadors.
Excellency and dear Peter, ladies and gentlemen, allow me first to thank you for organizing this webinar on cooperation opportunities titled Startups and Business Climate in Algeria. It's a laudable initiative in this difficult time while all countries are suffering from the COVID-19 pandemic, which is impacting negatively the world economy. I would like to take this opportunity to underline that Algeria and Austria share excellent political relations, which I hope be translated into strong economic and trade exchanges. The bilateral sectorial cooperation is limited to an agreement on the railway cooperation, which created the joint Austrian-Algerian Cooperation Committee on this field. In order to enhance furthermore bilateral cooperation, I hope that the two memorandums of understanding on the fields of environment and water resources currently being negotiated will come into effect so as to boost sectorial cooperation. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome the interest showed by Austrian companies to explore investment and partnership opportunities in Algeria, as evidenced by the figures of business visa delivered to businessmen by the embassy, just as for the tourism sector, especially in the Algerian Sahara region, for which all facilities are offered. Our two countries should not limit themselves to the current level of economic cooperation, even though Algeria is ranked Austria's second African partner. This cooperation should be widened given the huge opportunities of our two countries as well as Algeria's strategic position as a gateway to Africa. The recent entry into force of the African Continental Free Trade Zone offers wide perspectives for companies to explore a market which represents the future of world economic growth. Since 1 year, my country is striving to carry out a deep reform of its economic model, aiming to build an economy based on growth and innovation in order to get rid of its dependency on oil revenues. The new Economic Recovery Plan 2020-2024 is aiming inter alia at enhancing the private sector, encouraging the creation of startups and small-medium enterprises, reforming the banking and financial systems, as well as digitalization of customs and fiscal services. This plan identifies three drivers of economic growth: industrial development through a better use of natural resources, entrepreneurship, and foreign direct investments. The improvement of business climate to attract FDI holds a central place in Algeria's new economic strategy. This is particularly outlined in the concrete measures set up by the 2021 annual budget, like the withdrawal of the 49/51 investment rule, as well as the scrapping of the obligation to include local financing by foreign investors. It's worth noting that adding to these facilitations, Algerian economy offers other comparative benefits to foreign investors, like preferential production costs, qualified young and competitive workforce, fiscal and para-fiscal exemptions for long period and agreements for investment protection and international arbitration, thanks to the adhesion of Algeria to many multilateral treaties on protection of FDI. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, Algeria, which remains open to trade exchanges with Austria, pays a special attention to investments in higher value-added sectors, able to bring economic diversification, technology transfer, and contribute to jobs creation, especially for young people. It's with this spirit that I strongly encourage Austrian companies to grasp the opportunities of the Algerian economy to carry out investments, especially in the fields of agribusiness, manufacturing industries, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. Algeria is particularly interested in the long and rich experience of Austrian companies in the field of engineering. I am very glad to take part in this webinar. I remain very optimistic about the future of economic and trade relations with Austria. We are fully confident in companies aiming to carry out mutually beneficial investment projects. Thank you for your kind attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ahlan bikum, warm welcome, and Sufi Swen to the Austrian Embassy Algiers and to our webinar. Going back to the historic relations between Austria and Algeria, it was already during the War of Independence from 1954 to 1962 that Austria and her foreign minister at that time, Mr. Bruno Kreisky, had established relations with Algeria's FLN and supported the struggle for independence in the realm of international relations and the United Nations. After gaining independence in 1962, the two countries found common grounds on a number of aims and values unifying them, such as the respect for sovereignty of states and staying outside the two big blocs that were dividing the world at that time in the Cold War. Our two countries tried to work together on many biting international issues within the United Nations and multilateral organizations to find peaceful solutions for festering international conflicts instead of waging destructive wars, and to put an end to the oppression of peoples. Today, we are again called to defend peaceful international cooperation and make multilateralism more effective and efficient to confront dangerous brinkmanship and short-sighted zero-sum games. We also jointly engage in the fight against international terrorism, which has become a global scourge, and promote and foster intercultural dialogue. As a fruit of a certain convergence in the field of international and diplomatic relations, commercial exchange between Austria and Algeria witnessed a good start during the 1960s. In practical terms, sectors such as waste management, water treatment, heavy industry, and most of all railways were the main areas of cooperation between the two countries. Expanding the Algerian railways, Austrian engineers and companies well proved their mettle, not only in providing cutting-edge machinery and equipment, but also with a very generous transfer of know-how. As a result, Algeria and Austria signed a convention on mutual cooperation in the railway sector in 1987, as well as on double taxation and investment protection later on. For Austria, Algeria is the most important partner in the Maghreb and the second biggest in Africa, and the volume of bilateral commerce has exceeded 500 million euro last year. The range of products Algeria imports from Austria comprises mainly machinery and industrial equipment, paper and wood, pharmaceutical products, and cattle. On our side, the Austrian embassy and its commercial department are also striving to support Algerian producers and companies to export their products to Austria and Central Europe. Today, Algeria is at the beginning of a transition phase from an economic model that is largely driven by exports of oil and gas to a more diversified economy that is more open to the world and foreign investors. As one of the first steps, Algeria has significantly reduced the economic areas where foreign investors are required to establish a joint venture that is majority owned by domestic Algerian partners, and more steps will follow. However, Rome has not been built on one day, as they say, and many challenges need to be tackled and to bring administrative and legal structures and procedures to a level corresponding to the expectations of the Algerian people and those of international investors. But as Central and Eastern Europe after 1989, Algeria is offering a lot of potential and opportunities for all those who are willing to engage with patience and perspicacity and a sound level of intercultural sensibility. After all, Algeria represents one of the biggest and relatively untapped markets in North Africa and might constitute a gateway to Africa, a continent that soon will be commercially brought together by a common free trade zone encompassing an entire continent with a huge growth rate already now. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all success and fair winds in your projects and endeavors at this very challenging and difficult time. And let me assure you that my colleagues and me, the entire embassy, will be available and support you in your initiatives. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Her Excellency, Madame Mebarki, and also Peter, thank you so much for your help and your video message. Both ambassadors are really a good help in opening up political gates. And I just remember last week we visited our ambassador and myself a plant of Sonel Gas, where an Austrian company is doing some works in repairing burners. And after that visit, we also had the chance to see the valley of Bumerdes, and then we also visited another Austrian agent and representative of Trotec and Trodat. So these are examples how ambassadors can actually help in the daily work of a trade counselor and a trade commissioner. The topic of today is, of course, a different one, and this is startups. And therefore, I would like to invite Mr. Usani. He is a senior advisor of Ernst & Young, and you might know Ernst & Young. It is a huge consultant company, not just a tax advisor, but advisor in financial aspects. They employ around 300,000 people and operate in more than 150 countries. So, Mr. Usani, the floor is yours. I will withdraw myself, and you have now the audience for yourself. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, bonjour, salam, azul, guten tag. Welcome to this seminar, and thanks to our Syrian team in Algeria for their invitation. I am delighted to make this short presentation. I have just 10 minutes to present the startup and digital Algerian ecosystem. I'll do it in 3 parts. First, its history since 2000s. Second, the outcomes of that period. Then some recommendation. Of course, you can ask me questions by chat today or send me emails. The first period, till 2010, allowed the emergence of this ecosystem, mainly in the university space, with the support of some institutions and corporations. During the second one, 2020, the ecosystem became more professional with the creation of startups in some service sectors, for example, trade, recruitment, and transportation. Meanwhile, we have also seen the contribution of the Algerian diaspora elite, mainly in Europe. They began to invest in the country with their money and know-how. Also, it globalized by participation to international events such as Vivatech Paris, CES Las Vegas, and others meeting in Europe and Middle East. So, what is the result of this period? First of all, in quantitative terms, we have 4 good results. First, at the national level, a fine network of technology spark startups and incubators in all regions. For the first time, we have a female incubator. which is homework. We have today more than 2,000 startups in the whole country. Second, all economic sectors benefit, especially strategic sectors such as industry, energy, agriculture, mining, education. Third, entrepreneurship is taught in the main universities, engineering and business school in Algeria. For example, Algiers, Constantine, Béjaïa, Blida, Oran, Annaba, Tizi Ouzou, and others cities even in the south of the country. 4. Algeria begins to become visible on the international stage. For example, during the Vivatech 2019, Algeria Pavilion received a lot of visitors from several countries. Then, in qualitative terms, the ecosystem has really taken on color with several significant milestones. The creation of two very important ministries, the first totally dedicated to startups, and second for digital technology. Also, creation of two specific labels, startup and incubator, which give some advantages and access to new public funds. Second, the recognition of startups as economic actors at the same level as existing SME. This is mentioned in the recovery economic plan for the new period, the actual period 2021 to 2024. The organization of networks of startups, incubator, accelerator, in close partnership with companies and economic institutions. For example, CAPSE and Rallier network. The multiplications of open innovation space in major sector already presented, mainly industry. 5. The strategic challenge for Algeria is to become a very large innovation hub for all Africa. In that way, they launched recently a smart event on that subject. Also, diversification of funding sources with a good growth of the private sector. It's encouraged by the new laws. To pursue the list, we have some good news. First, the support of all major international organizations present in Algeria, such as EU, AFDB, and World Bank. Second, the launch of several public funds starting this year. Third, the creation of the Algiers Stock Exchange for financing startups and a value index for startups. On this slide, you have concrete examples with high impact. I'll detail just 4 of them. First, the Ministry of Transport has recently created its own specialized incubator. Already, a first startup started to market a connected taximeter in the whole region. Second, the biggest private Algerian company, which is Cevital, has transformed its R&D department into an open innovation space. One of its startups develops technological components for the entire brand group in Europe. Third example, several national and international banks and insurance companies support startups in fintech and insurtech sectors, such as Société Générale, BNP, Natixis, some Algerian public banks, and Massirvi. This is a very good example, which is a medium private company in insurance. Last example, the private fund Afrique Invest, which is well known in Africa, has created a compartment dedicated to startups. It has already invested in some startups such as Hitch, which is present in Algeria. Before finishing with a few recommendations, let's take a look at Algeria's main assets. First of all, the population with the majority of young people with a good level of education. Also, they are very well connected to internet and social networks. For example, Facebook has 24 million accounts in Algeria. The country counts 13 million students and school children, among them almost 2 million students and apprentices. Often they speak one or two foreign languages. Next, let's look at the economic side. The new legal framework is favorable to ambitious international investors. Algeria wants to start a new chapter of its economy. For that, digital and partnerships are among the main pillars. The local markets in strategic sectors show good potential, and Algeria has an ambitious plan to address the African continent as an industrial platform. The government decided to accelerate the digitalization of economic administration. Several projects are already completed and others being deployed. To conclude, I would like to recommend 4 initiatives to position yourself in Algeria. First, invite the most mature startups to the best meetings in Europe and Austria. Young leaders love it. We have some successful experience. Second, build a bridge between the Algerian and Austrian ecosystems through collaborations according a win-win model. Third, co-invest in innovation in different ways, alone or with others. We can give you some insights. 4, enable mature startups to integrate the value chain of the Austrian industry according different models: offshoring, co-production, digital services. To start fast, you can start with existing networks, professional clusters, and universities, engineering, and business schools. Before finishing, what does do EY for startups in Algeria? As you know, EY is one of the big 4 in the world. We are present in North Africa since more than 50 years. We count globally around 500 consultants and auditors. In Algeria, we have more than 300 customers in all sectors, and we know very well business climate and economic environment. To date, we have helped several startups in different ways, including helping them to develop business plans, find financing, and sometimes access our markets. The result is just magnificent. We are proud of that. Thanks for listening to me. I hope it was clear and will be useful for you all. I will be honored to answer your questions. Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören. Auf Wiedersehen.
So I would therefore suggest that we jump over to our next speaker, our trusted lawyer, Mr. Hakim Aitamar, who will give us more details about the legal framework for investors in Algeria. And he's a smart guy. I know him longer than 3.5 years, and he also has some tips and advice for Austrian business people that do business with Algeria. Hakim, the floor is yours. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Franz. Servus, Assalamu alaikum. Hello. I'm very glad to be part today of this webinar. I'm an international business lawyer based in Algiers. I was born here, managing a law firm. It's a family law firm founded in 1986. Our competitive advantage is that we work in several languages. Besides Arabic, English, we work in German and French. We have 4 offices only in Algiers, a network of 25 lawyers and expert jurists here. I'm an IP lawyer myself, and we've been involved in this international legal framework since ages now, and we are one of those who work with especially the German enterprise and the German family law closely with Austria. I'm sharing now the summary of our presentation and my input today. So we're going to talk about the legal framework for direct investment in local company corporation in terms of joint ventures, applicable rules for foreign investment, also amendment of the provision related to the foreign investment in Algeria, and regulatory framework applicable for startups, and the amendment related to that, and a few other legislative input that may help you as an investor or also as an Algerian managing director to identify the right setup for your business and explain it very well to your partner. The legal framework for direct investment local companies, we have here a listing of all legislative laws, starting from the law 16009 relating to investment promotion, and going over all the executive decrees that give more details on doing and fixing and processing. In addition to that, we keep always an eye on the finance law, and here we've been mentioning the finance law 2020 and the finance law 2021. And in the same time, since we talk about this bilateral business between Algeria and Austria, we have to mention also that there are reciprocal and bilateral convention that are in power, and that we also monitor its execution from the practical side. Now we jump to the applicable rules for the foreign investment in Algeria. I mean, as an investor, you're gonna bring your ideas, or you are gonna bring your business, you're gonna bring money or equipment. So we need to be always aware. How should I do that? There are processes. We are giving always depend on the sector of activity. There's a certain regulation to follow. I mean, besides what we are mentioning today here, we need always to establish a checklist. We have some general regulation that we want to share with you here. For sure, if you want to make business, you want to be sure that you are allowed to transfer dividend. You want to make business, and even if your business goes wrong, you want to also be able to send back your money. For that, we have the convention for sure, but we need always to check in a regular basis every single milestone to allow that the banks, and especially the central bank or the bank where responsible for all the transaction on the follow-up, is giving you also the right informations, and in addition to the checklist, and with the lawyer, allowing you to measure the risk and do things properly, and to reach your objectives. Here we talk, for example, as I mentioned before, on some criteria. In order, for example, to benefit from the transfer of dividend, here at the moment the regulation is saying that you need at least to invest 30% of the project value when the investment is more than 100 million dinar, 15% when the project is between 100 million and less than or equal to 1 million dinar, and 10% if the volume is higher than 1 million dinar. There is also a dynamic, so what I'm saying today could change tomorrow. And for example, in regards to the car industry in Algeria, at the moment there are some specifications that the investor must finance 30% of the project value and retains at least 30% on the participation capital. Now, jumping again to the amendments, there are a few amendments and main measures, which are in terms of partnership obligation, the Article 94 and 50 and 51 from the Finance Law 2020, and the Article 139 from the Finance Law 2021. There are also some conditions and terms on foreign financing, and we need always to monitor the notes of the central bank. And also some regulation, as I mentioned before, for each sector of activity. The provision of the article, for example, 52 from the Complementary Finance Law 2020 assimilated any transfer of assets from non-resident foreign party to a resident national party of the same import of goods of services process, which are subject to the provision of governing exchange control. We don't forget that the Algerian dinar is not a comfortable money. So we need always some conditions allowing the transfer. Algeria, I think, irritated its processes from the French history, and that give us here a certain, sometimes maybe documentation that we need always to prepare and to check and double check before doing any kind of step further. The regulatory framework applicable for startup that I will mention very shortly is the startup story is very new, but Algeria is one of the richest country with legislation and regulation. And all the regulation history and background for the startup started with the Law 1702 from January 10th, 2017. Where the Article 21 was the first time where we've been seeing the startups. The Finance Law 2020, Article 131, was the creating a fund for the startup ecosystem, and at the end, we heard or we've seen then in 15th of September 2020, the committee or labeling the startups, or who is checking who is eligible to be a startup and who is not eligible to be a startup. For sure, again, you need always to be careful that there are some criteria. These criteria are very large, and you need always to check. For example, as a professional, we try also to provoke the administration or to provoke the competent authorities to give us in a written form more details about the sector of activity. For example, if you have a patent and you want to extend the protection here and will generate an added value, and this project will be a project of innovation. And as I mentioned, you need always to go step by step and accompanied by a specialist and a legal expert, because there are some tricky parts, and one of them is to interact with the competent authority, what we call as a stakeholder. For startup, again, the amendment relating to the startup on main measures, we have the authorization capital investment, which is in the law 2020, the facilitation tax exemption, what our ambassador was mentioning before. But this is also, again, subject to authorization, preamble authorization. And very important to keep in mind as an international investor and as an Austrian investor, there is always the convention of the non-double taxation between the two countries. And if you want to say, okay, I want to go through this bilateral convention, then you may forget about the advantages. This is a small input that many companies forget to monitor. and they found themselves having some troubles with the DGE, which is our finance authority or central finance authority for big corporation in Algeria. So make sure that you keep an eye on your business. In the meantime, you keep an eye also on all what is regard with stakeholders involving the tax authorities, your bank, your partners, etc. Other amendment and center tax measures, as I mentioned, the finance laws are on constant dynamic. We expect also that the political changes will be reflected in the new amendments very soon. We always keep an eye on that. We have the suppression of the provision considering the profit of companies that have been allocated to the company's social fund within a period of 3 years, here as an example, raising the withholding tax rate from 24 to 30% in terms of services executed here. And you have also to keep an eye on the VAT, auto-liquidated or the self-liquidated VAT, if you are not registered as a company in Algeria. The royalty also, and for the computer software benefits as a tax abatement from 30% instead of 80%. But this could be done if you don't want to apply the bilateral convention, Austrian-Algerian again, abolition of the application of the reduced VAT rate of 9% to the CKD and SKD. And as I mentioned here, the note, investor, we need always to keep an eye on the dynamic and to make sure that we are choosing the right way in terms of taxes and the taxes accompaniment. For sure, I will be happy and very pleased to answer your question. Just saying that Algeria is still looking for, developing its regulation and making the right follow-up on terms of needs, like economical needs. There are many organisms such the WKO that influence also this business, and we all, I think, all stakeholders and experts today, we have our point of view, and we are very optimistic on the development of the business with Austrian and Algerian companies. And I give back to you, Franz, and I will see you later for the questions and answer.
Thank you so much, Hakim. Thank you for your excellent presentation. And I think that beside the double taxation agreement we have between both our countries, also there is an agreement on investment protection that is another safeguard for potential investors. I would like now to join and bring over Mr. Youssef Goula. He's a financial expert of the BNP Paribas. This is a French bank, really a big one. And in all major cities of Algeria, you find this bank. He has helped us with so many problems when there were transfers of funds to leave in time. And he is really the expert. And I would like to invite him to give us a topic of trade investment, trade finance and trade investment. Thank you. Mr. Goula, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Franz. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Franz, for inviting me to share with you and other viewers our view here in Algeria about the Algerian economy and also the new framework of trade and investment. As you might know, BNP Paribas is present in Algeria since 2022, and we are fully subsidiary of BNP Paribas France. So we are covering, let's say, a wide range of clients, ranging from multinationals to large corporates to individuals here in Algeria. And as an international bank, as I said, subsidiary of BNP Paribas France, normally we are well positioned to accompany all foreign investors, big multinationals who are seeking for developing their investment here in Algeria. So we have a good expertise in terms of foreign investment and also in terms of trade finance. Before starting my presentation, let me talk a little bit about the fundamentals of the Algerian economy. As you might know, Algeria is issuing some regulation regarding to the evolution of its economy, which depends in, let's say, 90%, especially in terms of foreign currency or foreign reserves from the exportation of hydrocarbons. And when the prices went down, and then the country experiences some difficulties. Actually, Algeria, let's say, is entering a challenging era, which is a succession of some conjuncture which are not, let's say, bad conjunctures. The first one, it was the Hirak in 2019. The political crisis, and then the pandemic crisis. And then for that, our fundamentals actually are very, let's say, in trouble, because the country experienced its first recession in decades, because the GDP is, let's say, the consensus, actually we don't have the right figures, but the consensus is about, let's say, -6%, and we will begin to recover in 2021 to have 2.4% of GDP, which is good for the economy, because actually Algeria, let's say, it doesn't shut down its economy during the pandemic crisis, so it allowed some businesses to continue, notably for the production of some goods which are essential, and then the financial system also continued during the crisis, and this has helped the country to weather a little bit the crisis. The second indicator is the budget deficit. Since the external shock, in 2014, when the oil prices started to go down, the country started to register its first deficit, and actually this deficit is continuing to deepen to, let's say, until 20% of our GDP. Which is, let's say, a huge deficit for the country. The other indicator is the FX reserves. Algeria, let's say, had in the past accumulated until $200 billion in reserve, because it's from its exportation of hydrocarbons. And when the prices were more than $100 for the barrel, and then since the drop in that prices, then the foreign exchange reserves continue to go down until, let's say, 40. Actually, we are talking about $40 billion, which cover only 15 months of equivalent in importation. The trade balance is in deficit. It's because Algeria is struggling how to contain its importation from abroad, because, as you know, our economy is mainly imported economy, because we import all kind of things, ranging from equipment to goods to services. And this is creating a huge deficit in our current account, foreign current account, and in our trade balance. And to how to manage that crisis, the government put in place two policies. The first one, it's on the the foreign exchange rate, as you see in the presentation, because there was the devaluation which continues until now, because actually €1 is valuated at 160 dinars. It was in 2014 just like minus than 100 dinars, and the same thing into the US dollar also. This is the first policy. The second is how to manage, the importation in terms of volume in order to keep a level, a secured level of foreign exchange reserves. And from that point, some measures or some provisions have been taken in different finance law and in other also executive orders. Hakim has already talked about foreign direct investment, but from my point of view as a banker, I have a pragmatic view because let's say the investment regulation is very diverse, because you have the foreign direct investment regulation. You have a part of the regulation which is in the foreign exchange regulation, because as Hakim said, the Algerian dinar is not convertible. So you have some rules which are stated by the foreign exchange regulation, and you need to comply with that rules, and you need to comply also with some processes, how to bring your money, how to convert your money, with which bank you have to convert your money, and also how to documentate your investment in order to have the security to transfer your dividend, or also to transfer the money once you decided to exit the market. Which is new in actually what we are waiting for that, because we have some international clients who are asking how let's say the framework is changing. We see some wait and see attitude from them, but actually the rule, let's say, is clear for all the Algerian partners, and people get used to these rules. In terms of the partnership, so you need to have for some sectors who still, let's say, strategic for the economy, you need to find a local partner, because you have to share, let's say, at least 51%, and 49% can be a foreign partner, especially for sectors who are strategic, and also for companies who are acting in what we call in Algeria the resale in the same state. So it means that you import some goods and then you sell that goods here in Algeria without adding any value on them. And for this kind of activities, even for the existing companies here in Algeria, you need to comply with this new rule before June the 30th. The other provision in the finance law of 2021 is the transfer of stocks and equity in local companies. When you are a foreigner and you want to transfer your equity and you want to exit the Algerian market, and then you need to ask for the first approval from the Algerian authority. In terms of trade finance, the new measure was related to the payment for importation of goods to the resale in the same state. So we had something which is new here, because if you are importer here in Algeria, and then you need to have a deferred payment of 45 days. It means you receive the goods, the shipment, and then you start to calculate 45 days before you make the payment to the exporter. And you have there are some exceptions in this rule. This rule applied only for goods who are not essential for the economy, like, for example, let's say consumer goods, milk, or things which are not, let's say, widely consumed foods, because for that kind of foods, they are accepted from that rule. Import, for example, for strategic sectors. Strategic sectors are the same sectors which are mentioned in the different finance laws. And then emergency, when we have what we call a natural emergency, and then there is an exception of this rule of 45 days. And also importation of public-owned companies are not entitled to that rule. The other measure which we are seeing, actually, because a lot of investors, lot of operators, local operators are asking for importing some equipment which is second-hand, which have been already used. So it was allowed by the finance law of 2021. So these are the new measures in the finance law of 2021. But I can summarize actually what is the current framework from the trade finance in Algeria. So you have some processes, some rules that you have to comply with. The first one is what we call pre-domiciliation. This is an Algerian, let's say, process. Domiciliation, it means that you have to go to a bank, your bank, and then you have to ask for a number of importation. This is the domiciliation. It's just a number. And before you register your importation, you have a first approval from your bank. It's what we call pre-domiciliation. It is mandatory since 2016, as I said before, because there is a linkage between our fundamentals and the provisions and measures which are taken by the state. When the oil prices began to drop, so they started to contain importation, and by that the process of pre-domiciliation, so the government was willing to, let's say, control a little bit what it is imported to the country. Prior to any, let's say, contract, you need to have that first approval from your bank. What the bank do in this regard, just to check that your importation comply which the goods, the list of goods which are allowed to be imported to the country, and also that the price is more or less, let's say, reasonable, comparing to a list of prices which is given by the customs. Once you have that pre-domiciliation, and then you can, let's say, you can go further, and you can sign your contract, or you can, let's say, order the importation, and then we put what we call the final domiciliation. So we give you the final number to your importation. Why that number? It's the same number which is reported in all documents of importation, which is to the customs, to the Central Bank of Algeria, just to check that you are really imported some goods to the country, and the financial payment complies with the invoice that you have presented to the bank. And then so you can let's say ask for the shipment of the good, but 30 days before the expedition. So you need to have that domiciliation 30 days before the expedition, and then the bank, let's say, take what we call a cash collateral, which is in cash. So you need to have the money, not only 100% of your importation, but 120% of the counter value of your importation, which is security to the exporter. Because let's say Algeria is very proud about its signature. Even the commitment is private here because it's a private operator who imports from abroad, but Algeria doesn't want to see some Algerian, let's say, operators failing to pay their foreign counterparts. So for that, the bank take 120% provision on the importation. And then what is new in 2021 is that the payment, so you have to wait 45 days to make the payment to the final beneficiary, whatsoever the mean of payment, whether it's a letter of credit or a document or documentary remittance or an open account. That is the let's say the current framework of the trade finance, and I will be glad to answer your questions that you will raise about the Algerian banking sector, trade finance, investment in general, that you see relevant to your business.
So thank you so much, Youssef, for this presentation. And I would suggest that we come now to the question panel, and I would like to invite all the other panelists to join again the board. And the first question I will direct to Mr. Oussani, since you have just talked about the startup scene. And there is plenty of money, Mr. Oussani, in international markets. And what role could the Algerian diaspora play in helping Algerian startups to grow and to get bigger, and finding also access to international markets? What is your position in that?
Yes, thank you. We have already been very active for several years in the startup ecosystem in Algeria. There are already business angels, incubator created on participation in several startups. Yeah, for now. There is, for example, in Algiers, we have Casbah Business Angels, okay, which is created by some young entrepreneur in Europe and USA. And then we have also helped Algerian startups to go to international, okay, in many opportunities. Finally, with the new framework, which will be launched in the future, we will amplify our actions.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
Right. I think there is also Africa Invest, which has a special focus. This is an investment fund that has a special focus on the startup scene also. And Africa Invest got also 30 million euros from the Austrian Development Bank to invest in projects in North Africa. I think this is also a tool to help get started. And I have really the feeling that startups will create in the future many jobs throughout Algeria also. Now the next question, Hakim, it's going in your direction. The question came concerning the majority shares in investments in Algeria. There was the 51-49% rule. There have been some changes. Maybe you spoke about it, but maybe you come back again and give us a little bit the latest development in that.
Yeah, thank you, Franz. I mean, there is changes, but the changes is not so obvious. The thing is, we have to exclude everything which belong to strategic projects. So the first time that we've been seeing these changes, regulation changes, it was still not clear. What do we mean by strategic businesses or strategic projects? So that was more clear recently with the new finance law. But however, I always encourage everyone is like to exchange at least in a written form with the authority. And this time you have to identify which authority is your competent authority to give you the right answer. Yes, it's clear in terms of text now, but it's still not enough, in my opinion, as a lawyer, clear. Before to create your company or before to do any kind of further step. This is the first thing. And the other thing is selling, like the companies who are just importing and selling goods without any productions, like revente en état, how you say it in French. These are also companies who are not tackled by this those changes. So they need to find, for those who are, for example, created years ago with the 30/70, for example, or another share setup, they need now to find the right partners. But if we talk a bit about the speculation, what we as lawyers try to avoid to talk about, is that we expect that there will be no retroactive effect of the law from one side. And we expect also that the administration, the Ministry of Finance or the competent authority will share sooner or later some notes to give more guidance or more clearance for all the stakeholders and the companies in that level. I know many of my clients at the moment, they are worried and they're saying, okay, what should I do? Should I give more for my Algerian partners? Should I, what should I exactly do? So, and at that level, I always recommend that proactive. And you have to contact the administration in the written form and ask them to give you like a clear answer. So we just not read the laws. We need to go further and interact with them to have the appropriate answer for that questions.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much.
The question is enough clear for our for those who are raising this question.
Yeah, I think so, Hakim. Thank you so much. The next question, I think it is directed a little bit in the direction of Youssef, Mr. Gula, and also Hakim in your direction. The question is from a potential investor who says, look, what are the steps? What do I have to do if I bring in capital, cash, and capital in kind, machinery, equipment, and for my joint venture in Algeria? And let's say after a couple of years, I want to sell my investment, and how do I get my money out again from Algeria to Austria, let's say? Youssef, do you have some answer for that?
Thank you, Franz. Yeah, as Hakim said, so first of all, you need to understand the rules. And for that, you have to be accompanied by a good lawyer and also by a strong bank who knows the local environment. So for an investment, your participation can be in cash. So you have to bring money to the country throughout the banking sector.
Right.
So just to put the money in the system, and then the local bank bring the money, what we call in financial terms, repatriate the foreign currency to the country, to Algeria, and then convert that money in local currency, and then give you the document which shows that your importation of currency went through the official, let's say, sector. The second thing, when you import equipment, it's equivalent of cash, because and Hakim can extend of that, because the cash, when you create a company, so you can bring money, or you can bring equipment, or also the know-how. The matter here is what is the valuation of that equipment. So you need to have an expertise which is recognized internationally, and then you show that your equipment was valuated to that or that money. And then it's the same if you bring the cash. And then once you comply with that rule, you documentate your, let's say, investment. And then you, when you decided to exit the market, you have to show that document. So you have to keep them in the very, very safe, place. And that's what I recommend to my clients. And honestly, since, let's say, my start in the Algerian banking sector, I haven't seen any failure in terms, if you comply with that rules, any problem when you decide to exit. We are handling that business with a lot of foreign clients, and every time, if you have the right documentation and the right rules that you comply with, and then you can take your money and your dividends easily from the country.
Okay. Hakim, do you want to add something there?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to what Yusuf said previously, we as specialists, we have a clear checklist that started with translations. We spent a lot of time just by checking the right translations on the documents. And then, for sure, we follow all the processes, the known, like, international processes. As you may, before starting your business, you have first a shareholder agreement, which define the obligation of each party. And then, if there is an objective, if there are several other conditions, we need to reflect all of this on the documents or the act of creation from the notary. And in the same time, what I always recommend for every investor, first invest in money, and then create your company without expertise, without additional costs, and then import the equipment, or invest on the license, if it's a patent or anything like that, to avoid any kind of local, bureaucracy on terms of evaluation of your assets or anything like that. So, and at the end, you mentioned before that there is this convention for protecting the investment. Algeria signed globally and bilaterally, as with Austria, conventions to protect the investment. So there are also diplomatics, I would say, legal framework, but technically, people are involved on helping people to bring away them dividends or stop their business and say, okay, I will sell my assets here and start something else somewhere else. They need to be accompanied by specialists, because one mistake could be fatal, and it will be then unfortunately a time-consuming and needs to invest a lot on legal processes to solve and do regulated his business and fix all those little teeny problems that could start to be bigger later on. So that's why, we have regulation. The only big challenge is, for me, is this translation issues, and avoid to send equipment as just do it first of all with your money and let the new joint venture then invest on the equipment on the patent. That's avoid seriously 3 or 4 years of stress.
Okay, thank you, Hakim. I think that was the last question actually. So a big thank you to all our panelists. I think we will have more webinars in the future as long as the COVID crisis prevails. Algeria is in a quite good position. We have less than 200 cases every day, but the government is concerned that the virus of British or from South Africa or from Portugal could be brought into the country and spread. So therefore, borders are not yet open, but we expect this will happen in the near future. And then also Austrian business people can visit again Algeria, and Algerian business people fly hopefully with Air Algeria to Vienna. And then business again is easier, and we can really kickstart it right from the beginning. And thank you so much. Bye-bye.